Welcome to the TRXL podcast. I'm Evan Troxel, and in this episode, I welcome Milos Temerinski. You might know him better as the Balkan Architect, whose YouTube channel has become a staple resource for Revit tutorials and architectural software know-how with nearly 700,000 subscribers. Milos is not just a content creator, he's also a trained architect who started uploading videos while still in school, driven by the simple urge to share what he was learning. That decision turned into a full-time endeavor that has now evolved into a company, a training platform, and a thriving community. In this episode, we talk about that journey from uploading his first tutorials to becoming a certified Autodesk training center. Along the way, Milos shares his thoughts on architecture education, why video is the best medium for learning software, and how creators can teach more effectively by being vulnerable, iterative, and consistent. We also get into the world of technical creativity. Yes, creativity, even inside Revit, as well as a hacker mentality that many of us have embraced to get things done in software. Workarounds, am I right? Today, Milos shares practical insights around how architects can use content to accelerate their careers, grow their influence, and ultimately build sustainable businesses. Something that connects to many other episodes of the podcast is the rising role of YouTube as a vehicle for knowledge transfer in architecture. Just like podcasts, video-based learning is dismantling traditional educational gatekeeping and empowering a new generation to learn in the ways that actually work for them. The implications for firm leaders and educators are huge. As usual, there's an extensive amount of additional information in the show notes, so be sure to check them out. You can find them directly in your podcast app if you're a paid member, and if you're a free member, you can find them at the website, which is trxl.co. Lastly, you can really help me and the podcast by sharing the episodes with your colleagues and by commenting and sharing my LinkedIn posts. You can also leave a comment over on YouTube and engage with me and the other listeners, and subscribe if you're not already, and of course, subscribe to Milos's Balkan Architect channel. I came away from this conversation inspired to keep showing up and sharing. So without further ado, I bring you my conversation with Milos Temerinski. Milos, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you.
Yeah, hello, Evan. I'm very happy to be here. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, this is going to be great. I would love it if you would start with kind of your story. Where did the Balkan Architect, where does this come from? And so I know you have a history in architecture, right? You're coming
Mhm.
to this as an architect. And if for those listeners who don't know, Milos has an amazing YouTube channel. I wouldn't imagine that people don't know about it. I'm sure, especially during the pandemic, this is when I became very aware of what you were doing on YouTube. But I'm sure there's a story to this. So tell me where you're coming from.
Yeah, definitely. So I have a master's degree in architecture, and Balkan Architect is pretty much what I've been doing full time since even school or my master's, and ever since. So I've always had a passion for YouTube. I was always interested in YouTube. I think I'm the generation that grew up with YouTube, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was always kind of my natural way of accessing any type of knowledge is just go on YouTube and see if somebody has a video to do that. So I kind of merged my passion for architecture and my passion for YouTube, and that's how Balkan Architect was born. So yeah, while I was at university, I started learning software. I figured that would be the best kind of path forward, and I started sharing that online. First, I created a local, let's say, YouTube channel. It was in Serbian, and I was doing AutoCAD tutorials. And then later on, I tried out Revit, and that kind of exploded. And here we are.
Nice. Can you explain what you mean when you say you have a passion for YouTube? Because I think I know what you mean, but I think there's probably an older generation who's like, that sounds like nonsense to me, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and so explain what you mean by that.
Yeah. So it was kind of my form of entertainment when I was kind of growing up during the formative years. And really, the YouTube format, I guess, resonates with me. I think it resonates with many people.
Mm-hmm.
And there is kind of a, let's say, a YouTuber approach to doing things or to explaining things. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't call it only a video format.
Mm-hmm.
You have let's say, a podcast approach, something like this. You have a TikTok approach, which is very different, and then you have the YouTube approach, which is kind of a thing of its own. Yeah, I think it's uh, what really drew me in is because YouTube is kind of a merger between, at least when it comes to educational content, it merges education with entertainment
Mm.
in a way, because when you're posting on YouTube, you're competing with entertainment, and you have to be entertaining in order to get those views and in order to get your videos out there. So, and that's kind of the magic.
Yeah.
I trick people into learning something while they feel like they're entertained.
Well, and this is what, to me, what the magic of YouTube is, that you can learn what you want to learn from who you want
Mhm.
to learn it from. And so
Yeah.
the techniques that you're talking about are the what that magical piece, right? Which
Mhm.
really defines who the audience is that you attract. They're coming to you because of the way that you teach, and the way that you just described it, I think, it
Mhm.
becomes part of that. It's the way that you teach. It's You're tricking them, like you said, and
Yeah.
they don't feel tricked, right? They don't feel
Yeah,
like
of course.
they're showing up because they want to show up, and they're choosing to watch you. And it's not just like it may be a little bit of a routine, but I don't even see it kind of as a routine. It's like this is something YouTube figured out really well, was like you said, you're competing against entertainment. And so
Mhm.
why would somebody sit and watch an hour long tutorial on a really boring
Yeah.
subject unless there's a reason, like, and it's the person teaching it
Mhm.
who cracked that code. I mean, this is, to me, like some of my favorite YouTube channels, like Adam Savage is Tested, right? For example,
Yeah.
where it's like he's a personality, he's a character,
Mhm.
but it's very authentic to who he is the sense that I get. It's not like he's showing up and playing a character. It's not
Mhm.
a YouTube persona per se. Maybe it is a little bit. There definitely are YouTube examples of that, right? Where people show up and they're a completely different person on YouTube than they are in real life. But it's those people where you get a glimpse, and I think it's not too different from a podcast. Like my other ArcaSpeak podcast been going on for 13 years, right? And like people show up because we're characters in their lives,
Mhm.
and there's all that Venn diagram of architecture and personality and subjects and all those things that people resonate with. It's really an interesting concept. And I think the other thing I want to point out here is that YouTube hasn't been around forever, right? I think when
Yeah.
2006-ish, I don't know, it was
Something like that.
something like
Yeah.
that, right? And so it's like when you say you grew up with YouTube, like before that there was no YouTube. And
Yeah.
and and then 2007 the iPhone hits, and then Android hits, and then now you have YouTube in your pocket. There's actually an app on the phone called YouTube back in the day on or it was called Video. I don't know. It was something like that on the iPhone, and they wrote their own app as a YouTube viewer, but
Mhm.
that just put it in your pocket, like that just made it available. And then this explosion has happened, right? I mean, how many subscribers do you now have on your YouTube channel?
I think it's 680,000 or something like that. Yeah,
Okay,
it's crazy.
I I've got like 700, right? So you're I'm not a YouTuber, like I'm a podcaster, and I still think that there's like a thing where it's like people don't I'm there because of the people who are there
Mhm.
to have
Yeah.
a place for them to see this show, but I'm coming from a different spot. But that's
Mhm.
incredible. Like you have
Yeah.
over 500,000 subscribers to your, and so as a way to get a message out, but also you just talking about the way that this resonance with an audience, it's absolutely incredible what creators who start off on their own, right, making
Yeah.
tutorial videos, but that are also entertaining. There's this huge potential that it's so interesting looking at it through an architecture lens, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think it's yeah, it is the personality that kind of carries the content. in a way, and that's why I always say that there's a lot more room on YouTube when people are consistent. They form that audience that kind of relates to them, and uh, there's a thing where people feel like they know YouTubers just because you spend hours on end, and it's the same thing with podcasters. You feel like they're in the room with you,
Right.
and then
Hmm.
I know people have told me, like, when they meet me in real life, like, I already know you.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know my Revit tutorials, you
Yeah.
don't really know me, but it
Right.
feels that way just because it's all of that time that you spend, and you're interacting with this person. It's the format, it's the video, and yeah, I think it's really powerful. And also as an educational tool, I think not everybody resonates well with different methods of teaching. So it's nice that you have this diversity on YouTube where you can have all of these different instructors teaching you in different ways, and then you kind of figure out what resonates with you and you go with that.
Yeah. I think it is slowly becoming the primary way in which people consume information, right? Like it's
Hmm.
and I don't it doesn't obviously apply to everybody, but for your generation, it's like
Yeah.
whoa, it's an incredibly powerful force. And um it's also on the creator side of things, I think like it's constantly changing how you
Hmm.
navigate the system. And I want to point out that like the number of subscribers, I don't think it actually matters. Like, and the reason I say that is
Hmm.
because there's people who are like, yeah, I wish I started a YouTube channel 10 years ago. Now it's too late. I don't It's not.
No, that's definite. Especially it's quite different. Before it was easier in terms of there wasn't that much competition,
Hmm.
but also the YouTube algorithm has changed quite a bit. So, for example,
Constantly.
when I got started, yeah, it was the subscriber count really mattered. So,
Hmm.
how many subscribers you got, YouTube would send notifications whenever new videos come up. They would give you recommendations. Now it's working more like the TikTok algorithm in terms of what's popular and what's good. It's going to be pushed out there. It doesn't matter if it's a channel with 1 million subscribers or with 0 subscribers. If it's something that people are watching, it's going to push it very hard.
Hmm.
So, in a way, it's easier from that standpoint, but of course, it's harder in terms of there's already a lot of creators out there, and it's yeah, it's different. And I mean, I look at it. I was lucky in terms of starting while I was still at school, and it wasn't like I guess it wasn't taking away time from, let's say, an actual job or something like that, where when I see somebody that's, let's say, 35 years old, they have a child or something like that, they have to take care of their family, they have to go to work, and then to start a YouTube channel and earn nothing for a year or two or even more,
Hmm.
financially, it just doesn't make sense. So I was lucky in terms of just starting when
Hmm.
I kind of had nothing to lose and nothing competing with that, especially because I was also, it was, I'm from Serbia, so here it's the economic situation isn't ideal. Especially when I was in school, it was quite terrible after the recession and everything in 2008, and it really didn't. It looked like an obvious thing to invest your time in because the alternative, the getting
Hmm.
a kind of a first job, was just ridiculously low paid. That YouTube kind of made sense.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. And I feel like, man, there's just so many things that I'm like assuming, but I don't think I should assume for the audience because there's a lot of reasons, additional value that having content on YouTube will bring to you. And I think it is kind of a long game. To your point,
Mhm.
you can't just like throw something up and say, well, nobody watched it, so I'm going to
Yeah.
stop. Right? It's one of those things where you need a long term strategy, and that plays back into kind of these additional values that come out over time. And again, like I want to reinforce, it doesn't really matter how many subscribers you have. I mean, I don't know what your numbers look like, but it's something like 50 probably to 80% of people who watch your channel are not subscribers at all. Like they're
Yeah.
still seeing, people are seeing your video, but they're not subscribing. And so the
Mm.
actual subscriber number isn't an indicator of the impact that you can have on YouTube. And by having this stuff being, first of all, you're getting better at media production just by doing it, right? You're getting
Yeah,
you have to
definitely.
force yourself to get into a routine of making stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? It doesn't have to be polished. It needs to have the right content at least to start with, and then you can slowly evolve that over time. But what are the additional values that you see come out of having a presence on YouTube and other social media?
Yeah, I think it's really powerful just to put yourself out there. Um, I think in today's kind of e- economy and just the way or the place where internet is right now, I think it makes absolutely 100% it makes sense to have some sort of an online presence in terms of your career, just because it's going to open up so many doors. Uh, IT people they can get perhaps discouraged if they upload a video and it only gets 50 views, but it's like 50 people actually clicked and watched. If you saw 50 people in a room, you wouldn't feel like, oh, no,
This
nobody
wasn't
came
worth
to
it.
my
Yeah,
video.
right.
Yeah. It's incredibly powerful, and yeah, you learn so much. Just I think it's also a thing where you when you learn a new skill, it helps you with pretty much everything in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It makes every other new skill easier to learn. So I think just figuring out, okay, how do I do this YouTube thing? Okay, so I have to record the video, so I need recording software. I need a camera. Okay, I need to edit that somehow. So how do I do that? How do I upload it? What should I take care of? What's the thumbnail? How does this even work? And all of that, I think it's a very powerful kind of learning experience on one hand, and as you've mentioned, you get better over time. Uh, I was lucky in a way where when I got started, YouTube was very pretty much prioritizing channels that upload every day.
Yeah.
So the idea was you had these kind of daily vloggers, and people would tune in to YouTube every day just to see
Casey
their
Neistat
latest
is
video.
the prime example
Yeah,
there, right? Every
yeah,
day
exactly.
for like 800 and something days. It was a huge number of days
Yeah,
in a
that's
row.
great.
Absolutely insane.
Yeah, and I was getting started during that time, so I thought, okay, I guess we're doing daily Revit tutorials. And those didn't really look good. Some of them were like 2 minute tutorials, some
Mm-hmm.
of them were 20-minute tutorials. But just from having that routine, you wake up, okay, I have to figure out an idea. I have to record it by 10 o'clock, and then I have to go to school. And just doing this day after day after day. If I want to go on a trip, okay, you have to prepare 10 videos in advance before you go on a trip. Or, yeah, I don't know. I know that aren't really any penalties apart from the view count going down a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
I took that seriously and I did it, and I grew so much as a creator.
Mm.
As my English got so much better just during that time, and yeah, I became a lot more natural in front of the camera. It's really hard starting out. Talking to a camera can
Mm-hmm.
be very uncomfortable for most people,
Mm-hmm.
but it gets so much easier over time. And then on the other hand, you have the online presence, and people start reaching out to you, and people, as I said, they feel like they know you, and they say, okay, we need an architect who knows Revit. Well, I feel like I know that guy, and it's just like saying, okay, do you have a recommendation to your, let's say, to your employee? We need another Revit guy. Do you know somebody?
Mm-hmm.
And you're way more likely to trust that connection
That you
of
already
your
have.
employee
Yeah.
recommending somebody
Yeah.
than that you're going to just put an ad out and somebody calls in and you're like, okay, I don't know anything about you. So when people feel like they know you, they're more likely to give you opportunities. And I got so many job offers, freelance work offers, stuff like that, which I had to, most of them I had to decline just because I was still studying. And then later on, I wanted to do this kind of YouTube thing full time. But yeah, it was so many opportunities opened up really quickly as my channel grew.
Let's take a quick break from the conversation to tell you about AVAIL. Is your team struggling to find the BIM assets they need? AVAIL's content management system simplifies access to all of your firm's content in one easy to use platform. No matter where your files live, or what type of files they are, you can easily search and access them from AVAIL. Now, designers can consistently find and reuse all types of content. So what does that mean? Well, standards compliant models and drawings are easier to create. The documentation process is less chaotic. New hires are easier to onboard. Projects are delivered faster with fewer errors. You get the idea. Visit getavail.com to try AVAIL for free and request a free demo. That's getavail.com, GETAVAIL.com. My thanks to AVAIL for supporting this episode of the TRXL podcast. And now let's get back to the conversation. I think of the title YouTuber, right? I'm using air quotes. Right? And I'm sure you've probably said that to people. Like, you're a YouTuber, you're an educator, you teach.
Yeah,
right?
it's getting weird now that Balkan Architect is kind of a company, so it's hard to just say YouTuber, but it's so many
But you
different
were
things.
a
But yeah,
YouTuber.
mainly YouTuber. Yeah.
And
I'm mainly known as a YouTuber.
And it's like, what imagery does that bring up in if you had 10 people in a room and you said, okay, when I say I'm a YouTuber, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? And it would be something different. Like, they would probably have an example. And I'm wondering if anybody would say, like, Revit teacher, right?
Yeah,
but that
I
totally
don't
is a
think that
thing.
many.
Like, that's what you've done with it, right? And it's like, you teach people, architects, how to use the main software that they're going to use to deliver projects, and YouTube is your platform and your delivery mechanism, right? And because it's on the internet, and that means that anybody can get to this for the most part. And so I'm curious, from your point of view, like, what have people when you say you're a YouTuber, what do they make a funny face? I mean, because again, like, in the profession of architecture, you're a YouTuber. I mean, and like that, well,
It's weird.
Up until some point, like, that was never a thing, and it's a thing. Like, I'm a podcaster. Again, it's like, well, yeah, so is everybody else. Well, no, not okay. I think I think I do it a little differently. But yeah, a lot of people during the pandemic especially became YouTubers and podcasters, and then it died, right? Like, they couldn't hang on to it. They didn't want, maybe they didn't want to, maybe it wasn't right for them. I'm not saying it's right for everybody, but I'm curious, like, what is the feedback that you get when you tell people you're a YouTuber?
So I think most people are just interested in, like, how does that work? Yeah. Honestly, most people ask, like, how do you actually make money from it? Like, is that your job, or like, do you have a job and then do this as a hobby? So that's kind of what I mostly get. And yeah, but when it comes to people from the architectural world, they're like, oh, that's so cool. It's like very interesting to see somebody taking this path. And something that they've noticed, I don't know if this is something that kind of started with soon, or was this always a thing, but so many people that finish architecture, they get their master's degree or bachelor's degree, they do something that's kind of tangent to architecture, but not necessarily working on projects and designing things. It's something else in the field, and something different. So I see a lot of people doing different things. So perhaps now it's not so controversial or not so weird that you're a podcaster or a YouTuber in this field. And there's, of course, always somebody that says, so what you do, like pranks and annoying stuff? You harass people on the street
It's
for
like, have you
views.
watched YouTube? Do you have any chance? Like, yeah, that to me means that that's not your platform that you consume things on. Yeah, when people say something like that. Yeah, because it's like cat videos, right? That's what YouTube is. To some people, yeah, that's what it is to some people, right? That's the interesting thing about YouTube, is there's absolutely everything on there. And algorithmically, and as far as like exposure goes, you are competing with literally everything out there. And then in your niche, like, if people actually started searching for something, right? There's a difference between searching for something and YouTube. I mean, this is something that Google and YouTube have absolutely cracked, right? Which is search. I mean, if how many times nowadays do you go to YouTube first to search for how to do something? Or it could be any number of like, maybe it's not how to, I guess my point here, but I think a lot of times it actually is. And so Revit easily falls into that category, or architectural software. Let's just put it in a broader category, right? It's like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
like YouTube's the way to go because architects are visual and we want to see how it's done in addition to maybe being entertained along the way, right?
Yeah, I feel it's kind of like if you're sitting in a room with somebody and you ask them something.
Mm-hmm.
If they answer verbally, just tell you
Mm-hmm.
the answer, then it's something that you can Google or ask ChatGPT or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something that they show you, it probably belongs on YouTube as a
Mm-hmm.
as a video, just because it has that visual side. And I think a lot of people uh, learn a lot better when they're shown things as opposed to reading or yeah, learning that way.
One of my favorite new YouTube hacks, I don't think it's available on every video, but I see it like in the YouTube app on my phone, is you can ask AI just to summarize the video for you because
Oh,
sometimes there's a 40-minute video that literally could be explained in 5 minutes, right? Instead. And,
yeah.
and it's that's pretty important, I think. And with because of AI now, some of the developments in the video space, I found one today where it's like this really in-depth way that AI approaches video they call it like control F for video, right? And
Mhm.
this is a great thing, right? Especially into the tutorial world where videos tend to be longer. How do I find
Mhm.
the part? I know I saw it. I know I heard it. Where was it? And then actually finding that in the video, more than just based on a transcript with timestamps.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
actually taking it to new levels. I think this is going to be an incredibly powerful platform to be on. And I'm curious your take when it comes to uh, like this whole idea of, I'm formulating this idea where, and you've probably heard this too, which is like, well, architecture firms are actually technology companies. They just happen to do architecture. I think you've probably heard that, right? And now I kind of actually think it's more on the media side of things. And this is maybe I'm biased because I make a lot of media, but you're a media company, right? Like the
Mhm.
Balkan Architect is a
I
media
guess.
company, right? And you have a way that you do this. You have platforms that you focus on, and you have a delivery mechanism that is YouTube. But like you're creating your main deliverable in addition to information is media, like, and it's how
Yeah.
people consume. I'm just curious, like, what do you think of in today's day and age about like media being media first? Obviously it opens up a lot of opportunities for people that they never you didn't come out of grad school. Maybe you did because you were doing it in grad school, but you're like, I'm going to be a YouTuber. No, you probably never said that, right? And so, but nowadays it's like, this is just what you do, this is how you do business.
Mhm.
And I'm curious when it comes to like thinking media first, what does that bring up for you?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's definitely a powerful way to think. When I see, especially in architectural world, when I see local companies and what's considered, let's say, a good company or a not so good company, it's mostly kind of that media presence and just marketing in a way. And you have these new companies pop up and they do, let's say, interior design and they have videos showing their work. They have kind of interactive ways of explaining things. They teach you what they're doing. It's not like, oh, this is what we've done. It's like, okay, let me explain why
Yeah,
what we have done
here's
here
how we
is
think.
actually really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so powerful, right? Because like you said, when you might meet somebody in real life and they're like, I feel like I know you, they know how you teach and
Mhm.
things that you think that specifically relate to the subject you're talking about. But if you're explaining on video how you think as a designer or as a firm, or why you approach this project this way. Like I recently listened to a podcast, Rick Rubin's podcast. He's a famous music producer, wrote a great book. I think it's called The Creative Act, and now he has a podcast called Tetragrammaton. I don't know what that means, but
Mhm.
it's really cool. And he had a
Sounds cool.
two part interview with Bjark Ingels of Bjark
Oh,
Ingels Group, and it was such a powerful, because it's long form, right? Podcast. I think this podcast, many podcasts by nature are long form, and long form, like us having this conversation, illuminates way more layers to the onion than you would get in a polished media piece, right? Where it's gone through all the wordsmithing and the color grading and the sound mastering and all of those things to produce quote unquote perfect media. This is not that. This allows us to go in depth. And I felt like it was such an incredible way to get to know Bjarke Ingels better
Mhm.
because he's not preparing an agenda, a talking points in
Mhm.
advance. It's literally like this, a conversation. We prepared no talking points before this, and it allows us to go wherever we want to go. And that to me is like, oh, I feel like I know Bjarke Ingels better. He doesn't know me, right? But I know him better, and that to me builds like I am going to think of him before I think of another architect when it comes at least to like I like the way he thinks, for example.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really powerful to see that, like how somebody gets to a certain idea and
Mm-hmm.
kind of thinking out loud. I think that's very powerful, and especially in the podcasting world, that's what it's all about. It's seeing how impressive people actually think,
Mm.
and you can see them, and it's kind of something that I've noticed. At least that's something that I always feel like when I'm watching a podcast. You can see when the guest is they have kind of their talking points, and then
Mm-hmm.
when somebody asks them a question, they you can see them kind of immediately jump into this mode, like, okay, I have this,
Yeah,
this is the question, I
I
have this
prepared
answer,
this,
and it's
right?
yeah, it's completely algorithmic. And then you see people that kind of take a moment to think about it, like, oh yeah, interesting, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
guess I would approach it this way, and it's so much more powerful and interesting, and you feel like that person is way more genuine in the way that they're talking or presenting themselves, as opposed to just having those prepared talking points and just going like blah, 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 blah,
Mm-hmm.
just one after the other.
Yeah, and then again, bringing it back to YouTube, this kind of visual portion, this other layer of information as an architect, being able to show imagery, being able to sketch, capturing that, and as a superpower that a lot of architects have, right, to sketch ideas in real time as they're thinking out loud and like talking through it is a really powerful form of communication. And this is a great way to deliver that information. Again, it's a form of marketing, but I wouldn't call it marketing, right? I wouldn't call it thought leadership. It's just like you put it out there so that people could, like, there's an opportunity for them to see behind the scenes the process, the way you think, like you put it. That's so powerful. And then when the opportunity arises, this is the marketing part, where when somebody actually needs something and they've seen that because it exists, it's out there on the internet and they could be looking for it and they could have seen your video, you're the one that they think of. And that to me is just kind of a new piece of the puzzle to today's media marketing advertising game. And YouTube totally is a game, right? It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, you're
yeah,
constantly trying to figure it out.
yeah. It's like I think the word sharing is fits very well.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you try not to make it too try not to that's something that I'm working on. I uh, just from kind of my experience in school and everything, I always thought if you're teaching something, you have to be very composed, you have to be very structured. You like go and this and this and that, and it's very kind of in a very strict manner. And that's, I guess, good in a way, but also it kind of takes away a little bit of that sharing side where it's like, okay, I found out about this. What do you think about it? And it's like this process where the audience is you're breaking that fourth wall, yeah,
Yeah,
fourth
right.
wall,
Yep.
and the audience is engaging in the comment section, telling you, oh, you've this is okay, but you can perhaps do something a little bit different. I found this solution. Well, that doesn't work in my area because we have this code and we have to do it different and so on. So I feel like that's very powerful, and I always find it hard. I feel like I'm kind of letting down my guard whenever I talk that way, but also I understand that it's I guess even though it feels a bit vulnerable, it also is the most genuine way to share knowledge and
Mhm.
to interact with your audience.
Yeah, there's definitely a trend. I've noticed this with my own work that you mentioned it a minute ago, which was like that contemplative pause when somebody asks you something that you're not prepared to answer. For example, I mean, it's not like it's out of bounds, right? It's like, oh yeah, and I think there used to be kind of a, in my mind at least, like I need to edit that down.
Yeah.
And I think now, speaking to what you're talking about here too, what comes to mind is like, okay, a bug pops up and you have to deal with it before you can move on when you're doing a software demo. Like,
Yeah.
but actually that's real life. Like that happens to everybody all the time. How do you deal with that? And then you're showing that like that's authentic to the experience of using these complicated pieces of software that we have to use to deliver our projects. And so now I don't edit those pauses down. And if I'm doing a training, you don't have to cut those pieces out because you don't have to describe a perfect experience because nobody has a perfect experience. And it's a teaching opportunity. And it's just like when I used to teach in the university, I would teach Revit, I would teach technology tools. You can't edit that out. It's live. It's right there.
Yeah.
Everybody's watching and they want to see what do you do in those situations because everybody has these situations all the time and it's a great opportunity. And I actually think that's a great training ground for YouTube, right? Which is just do it in front of people. Do the thing that you want to do and capture it right there. And I think this also gets back to another point that I want to make. I'm sorry, I'm going on for a second here, but
Yeah.
it's like this idea that like you can capture this stuff for those who aren't on YouTube or aren't doing this. You can capture this stuff. You don't have to post it, right? Like we did many podcasts on Archispeak before we posted the first one as practice podcasts, and it just starts to get you in the rhythm of it. And then you know what you need to do to get a little bit better, and then you try that, and then you keep this cycle going so that you get better and better and better, and then you get to a point where you're like, okay, now I can start putting them out there. They don't have to be perfect. They have to be good enough, and you will naturally get better at these things over time. But I'm curious your experience, like with editing and polishing and doing all that stuff. How has that evolved for you over time?
Mhm. So when it comes to just if I can just go one step
Sure.
back, you mentioned something and that kind of triggered a thought. Uh, Something that I found when I was at university or even at high school, I would learn best when I pretended like I'm the teacher explaining this to somebody.
Mm,
That was my kind of thing. I would do this kind of role play in my head, and I'm teaching the biology lesson today, and that's how I would prepare for the test. And I think that's very powerful when it comes to learning software. Like you might learn something once, but it's, as you said, software today is so complicated, you will forget about it in 6 months and you will not, again, you'll have to search for that solution. So just going through that and just recording it, at least for yourself, it can be really, really powerful. So yeah, now getting back to your actual question, you said about the editing process and how did that evolve and what did I learn,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
Yeah. So at first, my editing process was very poor just because I didn't know how to use the tools very well. So it was just kind of record, and if I make a mistake, I stop and then I start over
yeah,
until I have like a 5 minute video with no mistakes
mm-hmm,
or slight mistakes. And then kind of slowly, as I learned the basics, I started editing out the mistakes, or I could make a pause for myself, or if I if I perhaps wrote down how I want to explain a specific thing, I can then stop, look at that, and then record, continue recording, and so on. So it did kind of evolve from this very kind of rigid and scared position at first to becoming a bit more comfortable, and then I could edit out
you can
any
loosen up a
mistakes or
little bit
pauses.
because
Yeah,
there's a net that you can, yeah, use
yeah,
when you need it,
you're
a
kind of
safety
you're
net.
safe. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I do, however, kind of feel like I'm constantly thinking about, okay, do I want to explain this a bit further, or
Mm-hmm.
do I want to keep it very simple and straightforward? This is
Mm.
something that uh, is I guess controversial on my channel, where people are sometimes get angry about let's say I show a workflow and then they say, okay, but that doesn't work. My BIM manager would fire me if I did something like that, or and so on. And then other people are commenting, oh my God, this saved my life. I had this project due and I finished it and it was perfect and so on. So it it kind of feels a bit weird because different people have different expectations. You have so many different workflows. And do I explain all of that in the
Right.
video, but then
Right.
the video is way too long and nobody
Right.
would watch it? Or do I explain it very short? So now I'm trying to kind of keep the long form stuff and kind of showing everything slowly, step by step for the paid audience on the website. Now we're even doing live sessions
Mm-hmm.
and so on. So that's very powerful. And I was very scared of that at first, but now it feels so good to share something with the community, and then people they ask questions and all of that, and it's really fun. But then YouTube is more for things like as you said, with that AI that can kind of search through your video. I
Mm-hmm.
try to make my videos like very search engine optimized and very like not search engine optimized, more just search optimized. Okay, I have this problem. I need a solution. I go to YouTube. Balkan Architect has the solution. So I
Mm.
try to make it in a way where it's very simple and straightforward. And then if you want this more kind of chill approach where you're not strictly searching for a quick answer to a question, you're ready to kind of learn and relax, while we have a different kind of avenue for that. And I'm thinking about doing some live sessions on YouTube as well. I think that would be really powerful.
Yeah.
I just haven't gotten to it yet, I guess.
Let's take a short break from the conversation to invite you to join the most influential technology leaders in the AEC industry at Confluence. Composed of in person events and a podcast co hosted by yours truly, Confluence is designed to foster conversations between AEC firms and technology companies so they can learn, share, and engage with each other to support industry innovation. Software company AVAIL, which creates content management solutions for the AEC industry, started hosting Confluence events in 2019 to understand what firms are needing, wanting, and thinking around technology. To learn more about Confluence, explore upcoming events, and listen to podcast episodes, go to confluence.getavail.com. My thanks to Confluence for supporting this episode of the TRXL podcast. And now, let's get back to the conversation. How do you do that search optimization that you're talking about? Do you break things into chapters? Do you break out separate videos? Is it really in the description? Like how are you actually going about accomplishing that?
Yeah, I definitely try to do the timestamps. And I try to make each part of the video kind of make sense within that timestamp. So
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the video that's a 10-minute video
Mm-hmm.
and we have a 2-minute timestamp, I try to have that timestamp kind of work on its own. If somebody comes, let's say I'm doing a roof and it's like a complex roof, and then I have a timestamp like dormer. If you're just searching for a dormer tutorial, those 2 minutes would kind of give you the answer. So I try to kind of structure it in that way. And also, it's a lot of trial and error. I have over 1,000 videos so far, and it starts to feel at some point like I really have nothing new to say apart from the kind of the new features that come out. But then I realized at one point, like, okay, I have all of these old videos that I'm not happy with the way that they
Mm.
turned out. I'm a lot more confident now. I know a lot of new things. Revit has changed a little bit since then. The icons are different. Maybe something is in a different place. Why not try to improve that video and
Mm.
upload it again in a kind of shorter, much more uh, higher quality content type of way. So I tried that, and in a lot of cases it turns out very well. And then I forget about it because it feels very uncomfortable to upload something for the second time, or the same topic. Obviously, it's a new video, but it kind of feels weird. I don't know. Maybe it's just a me thing,
it's
but
just you. It is because, and I'll tell you why. Because man, the same topics have come up on my ArchiSpeak podcast over and over again, and it's like you don't even remember. I don't remember if we've talked about it or not. I'm sure we have, but there's a new audience a lot of times
yeah,
too, right? And they've never heard it before, and so there might be the people who have been the loyal listeners or watchers for years and years and years, and they're like again, and it's like okay, sorry, not sorry, because there's new people that show up and they don't know, and maybe you've changed your approach a little bit, and that I think is an interesting piece of the evolution of a channel as well. Like I definitely think differently about certain things than I used to, and that starts to work its way into the content that you present on the channel, and that becomes part of the journey of the channel as a total body of work, not independent episodes. Like I think one of the real interesting points about doing these kinds of things that you and I are doing is it really is about the big picture of creating all of the content over a longer period of time. That's a journey that we're going on and our audience is going on with us. People are picking it up at different points along the timeline. It's not about the specific episode and whether it was perfect, and it's not about whether your opinion on something at that moment. Like those things happen, but this is like just like life, right? Things change over time, but it's really about the whole life. It's not just the right now or the one that was 3 episodes ago anymore. Um, I don't know. Interesting, kind of bigger existential concepts that we're thinking of here.
yeah. It's one thing that kind of proves me wrong every time I think, like perhaps people are going to get angry if I upload a similar topic twice, is that m- a lot of people that kind of get our courses or get consultations, they say, "Oh, I've been watching your channel for years and I didn't know you have the website." And it's like I say that in every single video, in the beginning of the video, in the end of the video, and people just kind of miss that. They're
Yep.
just looking for one specific thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's okay. I mean, we all consume media that way because there's so much of it.
Yeah.
There's not
I
enough
just read the
lifetimes to
headline.
watch
I
it all.
just read the headline. I
Yeah,
didn't have time to read the article. How many times you? Yeah,
yeah,
all the time.
exactly.
Right. Well, one of the other things that okay, so we can stop talking about YouTube here in a minute. But one of the things that is really incredible is the comments in YouTube, and you brought it up, right? It's like this. Like there used to be. I mean, YouTube used to be a dumpster fire when it came to comments, right? But I feel
Yeah.
like I don't know, in the last few years at least, like they've gotten incredibly good at weeding out the junk and just
Mhm.
and I think for the most part, you said you do get some comments that are like really critical
Mhm.
or negative or whatever, of course, right? Because you're putting things on the internet and people are going to do internet things on the internet, and these are examples of the downside of putting things on the internet. But at the same time, like when it comes to like content, like you could go to your comments and get ideas for content, right?
Mhm.
I think
Yeah,
it's
all the time.
absolutely incredible the feedback mechanism that is generally in the positive category through the YouTube comment system.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely. I think it's really powerful. The problem is sometimes just filtering through all of the comments.
Well, with
Something, yeah.
you're just throwing shade now, like you've just because you have so many so many subscribers, you have a lot of
Yeah,
watchers. Yeah, I
yeah,
can
it can
imagine.
get, especially now we're across multiple platforms, so just even just going through direct messages is next to impossible.
Mm,
And it it's kind of hard sometimes just because you know that there are some genuine, interesting conversations that can start, but you just don't have the time
mm-hmm.
to just read through them all and filter it down to see like what makes sense to answer and what doesn't. At least that's, I guess that's the problem when
Yeah.
the platform reaches a certain size. But yeah, I think it's very powerful. Like people will leave comments, and for example, with Gavin, the Aussie BIM guru, I did a tutorial on something, and then he he left a comment. He was like, "Oh, I wouldn't recommend doing this way, and just because of this and that." And then he created his own video on that topic. And then, uh, let's say a year or two later, I created a new video, kind of fixing the old one according to his tips. And I think I mentioned that, and I think it's this nice kind of back and forth where you can really learn a lot through the
Mm-hmm.
comments, and
Mm-hmm.
also people give good ideas in terms of the content that I can make. For example, my favorite is the comment that I always get is like, "Can you show how to model XYZ building in Revit?" And I always select it, I Google it, and if it's something that's interesting, I can use it for a tutorial. So it's really helpful.
Yeah.
And of course, people kind of correct your mistakes or point out different workflows, and I think that's really good.
Yeah, you can't cover all the bases, and what's interesting to me is that you can get better together on a platform like that. I
Hmm.
mean, you don't have to be near each other, you don't have to be in the same office, you don't have to be on the same team, and you can still get better together. And so yeah, maybe it wasn't perfect. Maybe you learned something through the comment. It
Hmm.
spurred them to make a video. And let's just throw out shout out to Gavin because he leaves
Yeah.
genuinely great comments on YouTube content that he watches, right? And I know because
Yeah,
I've
yeah, he's
received that,
really
and I
good.
feel like more of that, please. That is it. It's
Hmm.
absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, it's really good to have people out there that are willing to take the time and can help out or join the conversation and add something insightful.
Formulate a thought and yeah, insight,
Yeah.
and then oh, that's amazing, right? Because most people don't take the time to do that. I mean, I get it.
Hmm.
People are. I'm busy. I don't leave many thoughtful comments, but I think it's better than just throwing throwing poop at somebody's video, right? Because like who needs
Yeah.
that? It's not that is a waste of time. I think it's like I
Hmm.
can't believe you took the time to leave that comment, right? And just
Yeah.
again, internet doing internet things, right? That
Yeah.
happens. So okay, so let's move on from YouTube and let's just talk about kind of teaching approach
Hmm.
and teaching technology and the importance of that. Why did you end up focusing on this content?
Hmm. So personally, I found video the best way to share knowledge, especially when it comes to software, and also like just DIY things around the house or something like that. So, and also, as I mentioned, I had this passion for YouTube, so I always felt like video is a very good approach or method to share knowledge. I was very frustrated at school. I don't know how other universities are, but my university, for example, I I think I've spent more time just in hallways waiting for the professor or teaching assistant who's late, and then waiting in line in front of or behind 40 other students to get like a 5-minute comment, and then
Mm-hmm.
you get to class and it's like, I didn't tell you to do this or something like that.
Mm,
And just a lot of waste in terms of the time. And I just felt like my time wasn't respected at all at the university. And so many things, like I even remember, like professors, you can see that they don't really care. They're there to just do their job. We're there just to do our job, and it's like we're just pretending to
transactional.
do.
It's really
Yeah,
transactional.
very
Yeah.
transactional. Like teaching is like the last thing that anybody's interested in there. Of course, there are wonderful examples at my university where I learned so many good things and was inspired, but also there were a lot of these examples where it's just horrible time management and just horrible way to learn. So I always thought that on-demand video is the best way to learn because it's video, so it explains things. It's also video, so it allows you to edit things in a way that's a bit more efficient than a person just speaking off the top of their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I always thought that was really powerful. And I was watching some courses. I think it was back then was like lynda.com or something like that.
Yep.
Paul F. Hoppen was there, and can't remember the other name of the other instructor, but I I learned Revit partially through those courses, and I thought, okay, I love their job. I want to try to do this. And yeah, and I was doing tutoring at school just to make some extra income. And yeah, I really fell in love with that, teaching people and then seeing them have that aha moment, like,
Mm,
oh, you can do that.
yes,
It's so incredible. And
that's
when,
addictive.
yeah, very much. It's addictive when you feel it, and
Yes.
it's also addictive when you sh sh show somebody and then they feel it,
Yep.
and you're like the gatekeeper of this incredible knowledge, and
Right.
or perhaps gatekeeper is a wrong word, but yeah,
Right.
you're
Right.
the uh
Source.
the
Yeah.
sharer,
Yeah.
the source. Yes, yeah.
That's cool. And so when you did you distinctly pick Revit when you began this whole thing as like I'm going to focus on this? Were you searching for something that you felt like, or like where did that actually, that subject,
Mhm.
that specificity of that subject come in?
Yeah, of course. So when I was at school, yeah, the economy was terrible, and I
What year
was
was this?
very, I think it was 2014 when I joined.
Okay.
And there was this thing where professors and teaching assistants were telling us like there's absolutely no work, like don't even bother. I don't know what you're doing here. So that was kind of the attitude.
Mm,
And that got me really kind of scared.
yeah.
And I thought, like, how do I differentiate myself in the workplace? How do I make myself a better employee, potential employee, a better candidate? So I thought, like, well, there's this software thing, and people at the university who are better at specific software are get better grades. They finish their projects easier. Just it's a lot smoother for them compared to people that don't know how to use software very well. So for me, like learning software was the way to go to just get a decent first job out of school. So I already in high school I learned AutoCAD because I was in this kind of like technical high school for construction. So I learned AutoCAD. I knew the basics. So then when I got to university, I learned Photoshop and Illustrator. And then I was like, okay, I need a 3D software. So I learned a little bit of SketchUp, a little bit of 3ds Max, but it was nothing that I was very happy with. And then when I figured out that there's this Revit thing that's supposedly the future and how it works, it immediately like clicked for me. It was like, okay, that's what I need to learn. That's the
Mm,
future. And at that time, a lot of professors at the university were very um, judgmental of me for using Revit just because it does constrain you when
mm-hmm.
you don't know how to use it at first, and I didn't. So it does constrain you quite a bit when it comes to the shapes that you can create
Mm-hmm.
compared to, let's say, SketchUp or just CAD that other students were using. So my uh, my projects looked, I guess, a bit too Revity for them. But I kind of felt like there is a way to kind of push through this and learn it, and I did over the years, or it took me like 2, 3 years to get really good at it. And then I was constantly, because I got so good at these different software, I was constantly answering questions for other people in school, like, oh, I have this thing. How do I make these lines thicker? How do I change this? How do I make that roof? And so on. How do I export out of this software? And that's how I kind of started doing tutoring for the younger students. And then I wanted to do some sort of marketing campaign for myself. And also, as I said, I loved these tutorials and courses, and I thought like I want to do that for my on my own. And I made this AutoCAD course that was very successful. So it's in Serbian language. I think it's Arhisoft Belgrade or something like that. The YouTube channel, it's still out there. And yeah, so that was successful. However, I didn't really get any new clients, but I did start earning a bit of revenue from YouTube, and that kind
Oh,
of
nice.
motivated me to start
Yeah.
doing something.
Yeah.
It was only like a couple of dollars per month, but it was like, wow, it's magic internet money.
Right.
Uh, so that kind of motivated me. And then I tried English and I tried Revit, and it just exploded from there. I just did
Mm.
one video and it got, I think, like 8,000 views in 4 or 5 months. And for me, that was crazy. And then I did a few more and a few more and a few more, and it got to a point where the channel was getting about 10 to 20,000 views per month, and I was very excited. And I was doing this kind of part-time job and for free, and I decided to quit that and try to do that daily upload, and that's what really grew the channel and established Balkan Architect as a let's say as a recognizable name.
Let's take a short break from the conversation to tell you about something that I think is pretty great and you might be interested in it. And that is my exclusive newsletter available only to paid members of TRXL Plus that I call Leadership Edge. If you're looking to stay ahead of the curve in architecture and technology, Leadership Edge delivers insights that you won't find anywhere else. Why? Well, because they are my deep dives into the podcast conversations, just like the one that you're listening to in this episode, to give you an edge on the industry. Each edition of the newsletter provides key insights for forward thinking leaders seeking innovation in AEC who are short on time, who isn't, offering the context of each conversation without the need to listen to the full episode. I've actually designed them, though, to keep you updated, spark your interest, and encourage you to tune into the full episodes if those ideas resonate. And the best part is that they are packed with actionable takeaways to help you navigate the future of practice. By becoming a paid supporter, you get Leadership Edge delivered right to your inbox, and it's a direct way to support my podcast while getting exclusive, valuable content to sharpen your leadership mindset. You can join today at trxl.co and start receiving my Leadership Edge newsletters. Just click the subscribe button either in the upper right-hand corner or at the bottom of the page, or you can visit the link that I put in the show notes. Thanks. Now back to the conversation. So I'm curious what back then you said you saw Revit as the future. Maybe your
Mhm,
professors didn't agree with that because of the constraints that you talked about.
mhm.
But I think also through learning how to master a tool, it does kind of open up opportunities.
Yeah,
And as a teacher of that software, you're maybe even showing like future you will be able to do these kinds of things if you put in the work to get there. And so
mhm.
I'm curious if that was really the driver for really focusing on that content. Obviously, you were getting feedback from the audience as
Mhm.
well, like, oh, I'm getting a lot of views on this software, and it's helping you make decisions around the type of content to deliver. Can you give us some insight into that
Yeah,
side of it?
yeah. I felt like Revit had this. I felt like Revit was only limited in terms of the modeling. It
Sure.
perhaps sounds weird, but
Because
uh, uh,
that's what it's
yeah,
built for, right? Is the modeling, right?
yeah,
So
it's
yeah,
modeling software. But
right.
yeah, but it's also something to do with university where projects look
Yeah.
very wild and it's not straight walls and flat roofs. It's mostly like crazy things. And yeah, so I felt like, okay, so if I learn how to use this software later on when I get a job, I'm going to be so powerful. I can make these schedules and I can do all of this annotation very quickly. I can make changes easily and all of that. So I saw the potential, and then that's kind of what pushed me into exploring it even further. And also, there's that aha moment that we've mentioned, and I kind of live for that. And uh, at some point, I stopped learning Revit because I needed for school, and I started learning it just because I wanted to teach it.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of I really enjoyed that, especially when I started making my first courses, when I was like, okay, roofs in Revit, let's make a course on that. And then I go through the all of the Autodesk manuals, and then I go through the forums and everything, and I see like what everybody's doing and all of the different things that people are doing. Then I do my own testing. Okay, how can I do something different? Can I use this tool to get something interesting out of that somehow, or this or the other. So yeah, it was a lot of that where I really enjoy kind of going really deep into a specific topic and then figuring out the best way to present that to a larger audience.
And that self-direction, I mean, is what leads you to content versus working in a firm.
Yeah.
If it's like, oh, okay, well, we have all these jobs we have to do, and so there's not that time for exploration and experimentation. And then,
Hmm.
but sometimes it's like, well, we really need to create this form. It's really difficult to like nights and weekends then for actually
Hmm.
looking for that stuff, which just starts to
Yeah.
drain the batteries and the morale around because you're not getting paid for that, right? And but
Yeah.
there's still this expectation, and so it's pretty interesting. Like you actually had the insight there to say, okay, I need to step away from this so that I can do this, and then that self direction, that curiosity that you have just around a generic topic like roofs, right? Because okay, well, man, there's a lot of different roofs out there that we you can just look around in the downtown and be like, okay, well, how can I make that one? How can I make that one? How can I make that one?
Yeah.
And then you can start looking at top tier design firm forms and say, okay, well, how can I do that one? How can I do that one in the software? And then it just leads you down this path of exploration that you then get to share with an audience. It's pretty cool how that works.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, I think it's you when you spend that extra time researching a topic, it feels very good when you can uh, gather this collection of solutions and just go bam, 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 bam. Like, okay, so
Mm,
there's a solution for this and a solution for that, and
yeah.
because it's very hard, as you mentioned, like when you're working on a job and you have to finish something, you have deadlines. The difference between, let's say, AutoCAD and Revit is you go from this where you kind of just do lines a little bit different and you get to that shape. Whereas in Revit, you really have to find a completely different approach that's not really intuitive
Yeah.
compared to anything else that you've done so far.
Right.
So sometimes it feels like, yeah, like what are you working on? Like this roof, didn't you do that yesterday? Yeah. So what did you do since then? Nothing. I found like six wrong solutions to this,
Right.
and yeah, I'm working on it. So it feels really good when you can help people avoid that, and people really appreciate
Just
that.
go straight to the right workaround.
Yeah,
Right. I
exactly.
mean, because like modern software is just a lot of workarounding, right? Like that's
Yeah.
a new verb, but it's that's what it is. And so because the capability is not there yet, but we still need to deliver, we still need to produce
Hmm.
this, and so I mean that does become like these tougher problems that you're trying to solve in the typical software becomes an art form in itself of finding
Hmm.
and then implementing these workarounds. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's also the bane of the people who come behind you, right? When they have to
Yeah.
fix that thing or modify it or something, and it's like, well, how did? And then they have to reverse engineer it somehow or start over. Yeah, it's an
Yeah,
interesting
I
conundrum in the industry.
definitely. I feel like a lot of people see this as, I guess, creativity being drained out of architecture, but I think it's just a different kind of creativity.
Yeah.
It's more technical in a way, but also kind of my view towards architecture has changed a lot since school.
Hmm.
I feel like at school they're really forcing this idea of architecture being art, and architects being these mostly misunderstood artists who can't get their work published or built. And I think I think there's a huge place for art in architecture, and I think it's wonderful. But I also think there is this kind of technical side where there are actually problems with housing, and it's not so much. Yeah, there can be art in terms of the facade and in terms of let's say uh, the aesthetic of it, but the technical side, we just need buildings being built, and we need to find the most affordable technical solution to that. And I feel like that's an art of its own, just to through software to find those solutions and deliver.
I think another dimension to that too is that in order to get those projects built, mastery of the technical side of, the technology is super important, right? Because that is
Yeah.
how the projects are drawn and delivered,
Yeah.
and figured out. Like how do you make those constructible is through that process. And so I'm curious your position on enhancing your skills, building on your technical software skills, unlocking levels of creativity. I mean, is that something that
Hmm.
what do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like I'm doing very creative things when I'm in Revit,
Mm.
and uh, it might not feel that way, like you're just going through parameters and okay, should we use a formula here, or how do we filter down this schedule? Do we create a shared parameter for this, or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
How do we create this interesting material? But yeah, I find tremendous kind of creativity in all of that, especially now I'm working with a small team, and then when you can go kind of back and forth, okay, so what's your idea on this? Well, I tested out something a bit different, and it's really fun. And yeah, I don't think like my creativity or my creative outlet suffered because I'm more on the
Yeah.
software side of things and not on the designing part of things.
Yeah, what came to my mind, so bear with me here for a second. This may be
Mhm.
super weird. I mean, there's this attitude, and we've seen this in software and architecture forever, which is, going into technical debt. Like the Band-Aid today helps us solve the problem today. We're just going into debt for, 3 weeks from now when we actually have to do it for real, or we have to undo it, or we have to deal with the way we did it today then. Um, and because the analogy that comes to mind is like the movie industry, right?
Mhm.
I'm a huge fan of like the behind the scenes, how did they do that? Special effects or filmmaking in general. Back when I was learning, like right out of college, late 90s, a lot of software stuff. I was doing a lot of 3D modeling and visual, movie making, fly throughs, but also I started to get into visual effects. And I lived in LA, and I would go downtown to the Kodak Theater where they would have masters of CGI come in and show like how did they do this thing in Phantom Menace, how did like teach me about rotoscoping, teach me about camera mapping and all of matte paintings and all these kinds of things. But they were transitioning to digital, right, from film.
Mhm.
It was just, I loved it. I ate up everything that I could about it. And even today you can go on like Disney Plus's streaming channel station, and you can look at like the ILM documentary, and it's a multi-part documentary of how Industrial Light and Magic made the Star Wars movies and other things.
Wow.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just said wow, like I
It's
didn't know about
super.
that. I'll
It's
have to check it
it's
out.
very
Yeah.
cool, because and my roundabout way of getting to the point is just like, everything is a hack, right? Everything is, it's
Mhm.
movie magic. This is what we called movie magic, right? They would use miniatures to shoot this scene, and they would use blue screen or green screen or camera, motion tracking or whatever it was. They do whatever they needed to do. And this kind of works its way back into YouTube with like Adam Savage's Tested channel. Like he worked at ILM back in the day, right? And so he was a model maker. And so it's all about like doing whatever it takes to get the
Mhm.
final shot. And architecture is much like that. It has been
Yeah.
traditionally, right? It's like, well, hack it. Like, okay, fake it, right? Everything is like just you'll know, draw a filled region over that, right? Like mask it out,
Yeah.
right? And it's like that there's a certain elegance to that problem solving way. And then there's other people who are like BIM managers and Revit, you know, they pros, and they know how to do everything, and they're rolling their eyes and they're like, I can't believe you did it like that. And it's like, well, we went through architecture school, right? Where you would rip the wall out of the model and it was better,
Yeah.
right? Or you it was, who cares, like cut it off with a pair of scissors. It's not even a clean cut, but it's like, okay, now that model really sings or whatever. And
Yeah.
so there's kind of this parallel to this film thing.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious, like from a hacky point of view when it comes to software and just making it look right, just because like ultimately we deliver drawings that just have to look right,
Mhm.
like that, really, that And until later, like I'm sure we're accruing some technical debt for when it actually needs to be built, or we didn't realize we were covering up that stuff that, oh, it all moved and the mask is still there, right? The filled region is
Yeah.
still in the same spot as where we drew it, and now it's not right, right?
Hmm.
And so there's this tension, this fight of like there was like the promise of BIM, and this is something I'm sure you're aware of. Like BIM is dead. Like we're seeing this all over
Yeah.
the place, right? It's because there was this promise, and then like there was this lack of ability to actually get, because of the technical prowess
Hmm.
that it actually takes to get to the point where it can deliver on all of these different dimensions. And so like we're hackers by nature, architects are kind of hackers by nature, like, right? And then there's this kind of really technical side of things and doing things quote unquote right and best practices and all of these things. Like I just went off down this huge tangent, but I'm curious from your point of view. You're teaching people and you're evolving things over time too, and you're
Hmm.
kind of teaching a future version. You're saying this is who you could become by learning this software with these technical abilities that you can literally like get through watching you on YouTube. And there's just kind of like these fights and these disconnects happening along the way. And there's all these different levels on the spectrum of technical ability in this very complex software. Like, like I'm just curious what you
Yeah.
think about all that. Let me just dump all that on
Yeah.
you. What do you think about it?
No, no, I think it's a great analogy with the film industry. And also I think as you mentioned, the BIM is dead people.
Hmm.
Like this whole idea. I think it's just people were really optimistic because
Hmm.
architecture construction is always such a mess,
Hmm.
always has been,
Mm-hmm.
and mm, could possibly always be.
Mm-hmm.
And people kind of felt like, okay, so we have this new technology, it's coming in and it's going to streamline everything, it's going to make everything kind of work like in a factory conveyor belt, and it's all going to be perfect, no errors, no issues. And it just didn't turn out that way at
It's
all.
really the I Love
And
Lucy
yeah,
version of the conveyor belt where she just starts eating the food as it's coming
yeah,
down because she can't process it fast enough. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, definitely. So I think it's just because the construction industry is so diverse, and the building industry, and every building is different. Every building requires something different. So you can't really have a kind of streamlined approach. Like you can do it for uh, some sort of like pre-built stuff that's gonna just gets assembled, and then you can avoid a lot of issues. But that's only part of construction. Like everything else is kind of a thing of its own, a life of its own. Each project, especially larger projects, and you may build like a small factory just to do certain some construction element for a specific project. So uh, just think the fact that each project is different, we cannot have this streamlined approach. Uh, and perhaps we're going into that direction, but we're definitely still far away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the fact that you can, and in the end, you still need to give somebody a drawing, so that the output kind of pushes you in the direction of using these little hacks and, as you said, filled regions just to hide things. Obviously, when we go to a point where the deliverable is actually a BIM model,
Mm-hmm.
you can't do some things, but also you can do a lot of other things that are not uh, kind of according to the agreement or what somebody would consider a kind of a complete project. I mean, it's one of the reasons I try to avoid most freelance work. When somebody reaches out, okay, we have this project, it needs to be LOD 200, and yeah, you just do it. Uh, I always feel like the possibility mm, for miscommunication is so large. I'm always very kind of fearful of taking on that project and just defining everything. Okay, so we have to go through everything. How do we model this? How do we model that? What is the deliverable? How should that look like? What should be included? What kind of parameters we use? Just kind of preparing that almost takes as much time as executing the
Yeah.
actual project
Yeah.
in Revit. And it's just not fun. So I
Right.
luckily I don't have to do it, so I don't. But yeah, it's just part of the industry where we're at right now, and I think we're far away from that dream that we were promised.
I think that's a great, yeah, that I think is one of the biggest reasons why the quote unquote BIM is dead, right? Is what you're talking about right there, just the amount of positions, time, and by positions I mean like staff to do these
Hmm.
kinds of things. It's like we never used to try to have to figure out how we were going to represent this thing in 3D the right way when
Yeah.
the deliverable was a set of drawings, right? And what's interesting is like we're still delivering the same thing right now. Like we're not delivering models for the most part, right? Like of course models get thrown over the fence with all kinds of disclaimers attached to them, right? Because of
Yeah.
the liability and all of those things. But we're still delivering the same thing as we were when we were drawing it on paper to the agency for review, for approval, and for the contractor for the most part to build from,
Hmm.
which is actually not even true. It's like actually the shop drawings, which is the whole set of drawings that comes after our set of drawings,
Yeah.
right? And so I think what's so curious about this is like this is why there's an uproar about this, right? It's like, well, there's we're just spending more time doing the same thing, right? And we have to hire new people that are all these experts to do these things, to push the buttons in the right order and to fill out the parameters correctly and to understand formulas and all of this kinds of stuff for the same thing, right? So we're spending
Hmm.
way more time and resources to do the same thing, and the fees are lower. And so it's
Hmm.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's we never lived up to, or we never met the expectation of the promises that were originally handed out and have evolved to become even more complicated over time. Is again like the quotes of the right way to do it, because it's just gotten way more complicated. And so now people are spending time in software they don't even like spending, they don't even like using it, right? And
Yeah.
I think I'm sure you hear otherwise from, you're teaching people and they're like, oh my gosh, this just unlocked something for me, and I actually enjoy it again. um there's got to be there's again like this huge tension. And so I'm just curious, like you've kind of defined yourself, your business, and your website, your training around this piece of software that's really complicated. I mean, how, where do you go from here? I mean, do you keep
Hmm.
doing what you're doing? Like, or how, I mean, obviously you don't have to. Like, nobody has to stay in the same business that they're in. They could
Yeah.
do something else. I'm just curious from, have you started to think about that? Or, you hear things like BIM is dead and that's what your livelihood is based on, is teaching people how to use these tools. So like, I'm just curious from kind of a bigger picture
Hmm.
Milos point of view, like where do you see things going, and how are you responding to it?
Yeah, I did get a little bit afraid when the AI hype
Mm,
was at its peak. Like, okay, am I being outsourced to
replaced.
AI?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I did try to ask ChatGPT to explain something in Revit and to just something very simple to teach me how to do, and it failed miserably. So
Mm.
that kind of made me
Reassured
feel
you.
a bit better. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, in terms of the business, so we've recently, so this year we're just doing the first group right now. We became an Autodesk authorized training center,
Mm,
and that means we can provide an Autodesk certificate once the students finish the course, and also we can provide Revit software for the duration of the course, so they don't have to buy the software
mm,
if they're just learning. So that's something new, and this allows us to um, on one hand, it allows us to do these groups, and it also pushes us in that direction, just because that's part of the roles that Autodesk gives us. We need to have some one-on-ones or some live sessions with the participants of the course, and this is something that I've enjoyed very much, and just doing these, both doing the live sessions, but also preparing the course and just doing it at a higher quality that they've done previously, just because we can charge more of it because of the certification, and that means that I can spend a lot more time and try to make it the best possible learning solution for somebody. So uh, for a while, I was thinking, okay, so next I need to do Dynamo and I need to do
Mm.
some advanced BIM stuff, and I need to get into coding, like for example, what Gavin is doing right now, and that that just didn't. I kind of felt I need to go into that direction, but I realized there's so much more room to grow just for the beginners in terms of providing um, the best learning experience for them. So I realized that yeah, let's just focus and do this one thing perfectly, and then we can expand from there. And yeah, I think it's also it has to do a little bit with how I started on YouTube with those daily uploads. I felt like I always needed to do more and more and more and more and different in order to stay relevant.
Mm.
But now when I see it, like when I focus just on the very simple beginner things, people and if I do them better than ever before, people resonate really well with that. So currently the goal is just to create the best possible learning experience for beginners and then kind of grow with them and then do some more
Nice.
advanced things and just do more of that personal touch and that one-on-one. We do consulting, for example. I don't do it. A colleague of mine does. She's an authorized or she's a certified instructor, and people are really happy to have that ability to call somebody up, jump on a Zoom call, let me access your computer, let me show you on your computer how to solve the particular issue that's giving you kind of headaches for days. And that has been really powerful. So uh, also, I feel like that's something that AI will not be able to replace
Mm.
soon.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's something that I like to I would like to explore, and also just going from a solo creator. I always felt like I was going to be like a solo freelancer. I have all of this freedom and all of that, and that sounded really fun. But after 4 years of that, it kind of felt a little bit empty, and also I saw many limitations. And that's when I decided to actually start hiring people and form a company, and just now like my fun thing is just running this company and
Mm.
putting out fires. And sometimes it's frustrating, but it's also really fun, and I guess it's some sort of growth. So that's
Yeah.
what I enjoy.
Well, you've transitioned from working in the company, being the creator, to working on the company, right? And now you
Yeah.
have this responsibility with these staff members that you've hired to build this
Mhm.
company and offer these different training solutions and consulting and all these things. And strategically, like you have to make big
Mhm.
decisions, and that's so hard to do. When we saw that
Yeah.
in architecture, right? It's like, well, the project is like this one way street, and it's this narrow, and these are the blinders, and I have to get to the next deadline so that I can get to the next deadline so that I can get to the next deadline. What do you mean work on the practice? Like, who has time to
Yeah.
do that, right? I mean, and so to your credit, like you saw that with the future of the Balkan Architect, the channel, the platform, the courses, all those kinds of things to be able to reach more people. I think that,
Mhm.
there's scale with doing what you're doing at some point becomes part of the conversation. And so like
Yeah.
obviously scale and like on the YouTube side is one thing, but now getting people started on the right foot, getting the right foundation under them to really leverage the tools so that they can take their skills, their practice to the next level is a big deal. How do you do that? Well, you have to actually step away from creating the stuff to having a team that can do that so that it can
Mhm.
scale in the way that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's completely different when, and I constantly find myself arguing with myself. Like the creative me is
Yes.
arguing with the
Uh-huh.
boss me, who is also arguing with the company owner me, and it's all of these kind of personas that each one of them has their own interests, and I have to kind of find a way to to make peace between all of them.
Do they each have their own office in the, or is
No,
it just inside your head? Everyone has
yeah, that's just
their room inside
yeah.
your head. Yeah, fun. Well, where can people find out more about what you're offering, what your platform is all
Mhm,
about, and how they can connect with you to where they can go to learn more?
mhm. Yeah, so balkanarchitect.com, definitely the best place to go. We're now doing a big redesign, so the website is going to look a lot nicer and be a lot more functional in the following month or two. So yeah, I think that's where people can learn pretty much everything what we offer, what we're all about, and yeah, if they want to get started on their Revit journey with us, that's where they should go.
And there's lots and lots and lots of previous content to really get a sense
Hmm.
on the Balkan Architect YouTube channel. And I'll
Yeah,
put links to those in the show notes. Milos, it's been a fun conversation. Thank you for taking the
yeah,
time to share the journey that you've been on. I mean, when did the Balkan Architect actually get started? It was like 2018 as far as like when you,
yeah, something
something
like
like
that.
that?
Yeah.
But even getting to that point, like it took years, right? I think you said you started YouTube in 2014-ish. Is that what you said? So,
So I started learning Revit in
okay.
2014, but yeah, it took I think over 2 years until the channel like really
Yeah.
became something.
And now it's a
Yeah.
resource for everybody. I mean, it's just thank you for doing that. I mean, it's very cool that our profession has people like you doing the things that you're doing and bringing this content to others. So appreciate it. This has been a fun conversation.
Yeah, it has been really fun. It was really nice talking to you. I love talking to people in the industry, especially like this, doing different things. So I love the fact that you're doing a podcast on this. I think it's very powerful, and yeah, it was really interesting.
All right. Until next time.